Okay, so this is one of the sort of trickier questions you might get on level two reading paper, and I do want to go through it in some detail because there's several different steps to this that you have to sort of basically do. So obviously I've just taken snippets of texts here, but just for context, first text it's taken from a credit card advertising letter, the sort of thing you might get through your door, trying to get you to take out a credit card. And the second one here is a flyer that's giving detailed information about credit card debt, so you know what the benefits are and you know what the risks are before you take out a credit card. And you'll get a question that will say something like this: describe and compare language used in both documents. So a breakdown what they mean by this. With the describe bit, essentially they're looking for you being able to identify language use. So this could be a language feature or overall tone, because they're not specifically asking for language features, they're talking about language used. You can think about tone and voice here a bit as well. And they also want you to explain what the effect is on the reader. Okay. And compare, they want you to draw a comparison. And this could be similarity or difference between how these are used. Okay. So you could talk here about, you could compare two similar language features used for different effects. Or you could compare two different language features. Okay. So to talk you through this, this is broadly speaking what this might look like. Now, if we have a quick look at this start bit here, um, in the little paragraph here, you can see here they use the rhetorical question, never held a credit card before. And then it goes on to say the Supremo Bank credit card is specifically designed for people who are new to credit. It's an easy way to pay for things and it can help build your credit rating. And we can see in text two as well, we've got this here, thinking of taking out your first credit card. Make sure you know what the costs are involved. Now, we could compare these because they are both examples of rhetorical questions. And while they are both examples of rhetorical questions, once we start to dig a bit deeper, we notice that they're being used for different purposes. They're being used for different effects. So, for instance, if we read on after never held a credit card before, we can see here that the advert is telling us that this would be the perfect credit card for you. So I would argue that this rhetorical question, never held a credit card before, would be designed to sort of get the reader thinking, oh, okay, you know what? That's me. I've never had a credit card before. Okay, so maybe this one is the one I should go for. Whereas if we have a look at this, it says, think of taking out your first credit card. So again, a very similar rhetorical question. It's more or less the same meaning, but the effect is different because it then goes on to say, make sure you know what the costs are. Hmm. So it's almost sort of warning me. So the first one is inviting me, the second one's warning me. Okay. So we could use that one to draw a comparison. So we could write that up like so. Text one uses rhetorical question. So you can see here I've identified and quoted. And then I'm going to go on to explain what the effect of that is going to be on the reader. This makes the reader feel as if it's almost an invitation, as they then go on to talk about how their credit card is great for first time borrowers. Okay, so there I've got my effect on the reader. Okay. Um, then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to compare. And if you remember from looking at sort of comparing ideas and opinions, we want to use very clear comparisons. We want our comparisons here to be explicit. So we are going to use those words like however and similarly. Okay. So similarly, because of course we're comparing the fact here that they both use rhetorical questions. That's a similarity between two documents. They're both using rhetorical questions. The difference comes in the effects it has. Text 2 also uses a rhetorical question. So again, but of course, the implication here is different. What they are going for with this use of rhetorical question is different. So we want to, again, use a comparative word to show that we are comparing the differences here. Okay, so we'll go with however. Unlike text 1, this has a different effect. The text with the writer then goes on to address the reader and warn them about some of the potential risks. So it serves more as a way of getting the reader to pay attention to the downsides than encouraging them. And there we have our effect on the reader. Now, that is quite handy. If you can spot where the writers have used the same language feature, but for a different purpose, that can be quite handy. I would say that's probably a really good one to go for, because one of the trickier parts of this question, the trickier parts of language analysis, is actually considering the effect. And if you are comparing the same language feature, odds are in the exam questions they give you, if text 1 is using one language feature and text 2 is also using this language feature, even though they're using the same language feature, they are going to be doing it for different reasons. So by using the same language feature, you know you're comparing like with like, but you also know that you are going to have to compare how they're actually used differently, more or less, which kind of encourages you to dig a bit deeper and really get to grips with what this particular language feature is doing. Okay, so there we go. That is broadly speaking how you approach that. So you identify the language feature or the tone of the piece. You explain the effects on the reader. You draw an explicit comparison. So you either say, similarly, text 2 also uses, or however, text 2 uses different language features or different tone, and give that. And then you make a second comparison where you're comparing how the effect is similar or different. Okay, so you've essentially got two pieces of comparison working together here. And that is broadly speaking how you approach that question.